Nintendo really threw one over Zelda fans. I still can't believe that we're going to be getting Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, a Hyrule Warriors game that will be canon to the Zelda story and act as a prequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. But with the peculiar position of release, as well as another project within development, I believe that this is all done for a reason and that Age of Calamity is going to set us up extremely well for Breath of the Wild 2. Honestly, I'm still stunned over the reveal and concept of Age of Calamity. Sure, there are a couple of people that wanted a concept like this, but when it comes to the grand consensus, this is a game we truly never knew we wanted, and yet we are getting it. Don't get me wrong, I am not complaining at the slightest, and I am ready for a project like this, and I cannot wait for it to come out. But with all things considered and what we thought we knew, we really did not have to get Age of Calamity. No one was really asking for a Hyrule Warriors game on this large of a scale. I'm talking on the likes of wanting Smash Brothers on the Nintendo Switch, which we did get. There wasn't legion of fans clamoring for a game that will give us the true insight to what happened during the Age of Calamity. And yet here we are. You know, knowing from Nintendo's track record, they don't really go in deep into the pre-existing background lore of Zelda games, especially dealing with a specific war in the lore. So mark it up as an extremely pleasant surprise that we're getting a game like this that will explain the Calamity 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild, using the same graphical style and a style of gameplay that makes complete sense to what happened during that time being developed by another studio. It really is an all-aligning star type of deal, and it's awesome considering that we were all expecting Breath of the Wild 2 to be the next main Zelda release. With that in mind, I truly resign myself in believing that we're never truly going to understand what happened during the Great Calamity, or they were going to explain it in some way, shape, or form or fashion in Breath of the Wild 2. So this honestly is way better than what I was expecting. With that being said, and the fact that Age of Calamity is coming very soon, we have to dive down and understand that we don't know much about the Great Calamity besides the fact that we got in Breath of the Wild and in Creating a Champion. The truth behind the entity known as the Calamity, the real understanding and prowess of the substance known as malice, and of course the connections on all of this to our boy Ganon and Ganondorf. How did he get from the Gerudo King, the great king of evil, to this? Honestly, that's a concept and question that I don't see explored enough in terms of Zelda content creation and the Zelda games. Honestly, this form of Ganon is such a far cry from what we've seen and are used to when it comes to the Zelda series, and I would like to learn a little bit about how A gets to B. Besides the focus of Age of Calamity, I would like to learn more about the characters that we've seen and heard about when it comes to Breath of the Wild, such as the champions of course, the time before they fell, possibly younger forms of characters that we do know existed during the time of the Great Calamity, such as Impa, Robbie, and Purah, and of course background characters that we heard existed during the time of the Calamity that we actually never saw, such as the Fortune Teller, and Cass's master, the Sheikah poet that was in love with Princess Zelda. But when it comes to covering all of this, what I'm trying to say is that it really boils down to the notion that Nintendo really felt the need to put out a game like this to set up the story, possibly for us to understand Breath of the Wild 2 a lot better. Like I said before, this really goes against Nintendo's track record when it comes to Zelda games and elaborating on specific lore. Like, when did they understand and feel the need to elaborate on a story when it comes to The Legend of Zelda? With that understanding in mind, it really tells me that Nintendo is trying to set up something big when it comes to the now risen trilogy of Breath of the Wild going into Breath of the Wild 2 off of Age of Calamity. With the idea that Breath of the Wild 2, according to Creating a Champion, has been in development since at least that of October 2017, I feel that it will be in the realm of possibility to surmise that at one point during development of Breath of the Wild 2, if not close to the beginning of development of Breath of the Wild 2, Nintendo really decided to put in a dual development project when it comes to them developing Breath of the Wild 2, Nintendo EPD, and in handing over a project such as Age of Calamity over to Koei Tecmo to develop that in tandem. I mean, they've had this game in their pocket as a secret for the longest. It's literally coming out in a couple of months, November 20th, 2020. So when it comes to the closeness of production, promotion, and possibly release, I mean, we are talking about The Legend of Zelda 35th anniversary next year in 2020. 2021, it seems Nintendo really has a huge plan in motion when it comes to the connections that Breath of the Wild is going to gain from Age of Calamity, setting up players for Breath of the Wild 2 possibly next year. Hey, we may not be getting Breath of the Wild 2 in 2020, but with Age of Calamity, I feel that's a great replacement. With all these ideas floating in my head about how Age of Calamity could be connected to Breath of the Wild 2, it really has me thinking that the overall story narrative of Age of Calamity isn't really going to be just diving into the time of 100 years prior to Breath of the Wild that will lead directly into Breath of the Wild. I'm thinking that the story of Age of Calamity will actually take place in real time after that of Breath of the Wild. What I mean by this is that after Breath of the Wild, the end of the game, the true ending, after Link saves Zelda and they seal Calamity Ganon together, Age of Calamity will take place after that point in time, in the standpoint that Zelda and Impa are telling the story to Link about what happened 100 years prior. I feel that both Zelda and Impa are two sides of the coin that will really shed the light on what happened during the Great Calamity. As not only Zelda and Impa are very closely connected when it comes to the overall lore of the Legend of Zelda series, but it'll also tie into the notion that this unknown Sheikah, which we all believe is Impa, will actually be Impa. So now that you saved Zelda at the end of Breath of the Wild, her along with Impa will be able to completely recount what happened during the Age of Calamity from most if not all sides. Because although Link did get back a lot of his own memories, those are his own conception of what happened during the Age of Calamity from his own eyes, and from the memories that we saw in Breath of the Wild, it really didn't go beyond that of him being a champion. So it could be possible that he does not have all of his memories back yet. And Age of Calamity could really be set up as a game to give Link back all of his memories to be the fully realized Link, the champion, the soldier, the royal guard that we should know him from Age of Calamity in the real time of Breath of the Wild. And why do we have to do all this? To set himself up and to get completely ready for a journey that he and Zelda must take into the depths in order to look for something. And that something is what we saw in the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer. Since the fact is, Age of Calamity is going to be very reliant on what has happened in Breath of the Wild in order to not only help the overall sales of the game, but to present the story. That's the whole reason why all this hype is getting generated. And Nintendo knows this, so I feel they're going to be circumventing a lot of that hype by the end of Age of Calamity into Breath of the Wild 2. One cool theory that I had in my head while I was talking to my fellow Zelda content creators, which a full video is coming soon by the way, is that I believe that when Zelda was swallowed up by Calamity Ganon in the backstory of Breath of the Wild, and more than likely at the end of the game of Age of Calamity, she is going to gain a flash montage, a peek into Ganondorf's memory as a human, leading to his transformation into the Calamity and the predicament that we see in Breath of the Wild 2. This surge of memories will act as a clue, as a hint for Nintendo to set us up on why Link and Zelda are in the depths in the first place. When it comes to the Breath of the Wild 2 trailer, they literally started there. There has to be a reason, an advent for this expedition, as when we last left them, they wanted to help bring Hyrule back to its former glory or beyond, and they had to go check out Vah Ruta on why it was not working. In my opinion, those two tangents do not correlate whatsoever. So at Age of Calamity, possibly setting up Breath of the Wild 2, I feel that we're gonna get a lot of story ideals and connections that can only be revealed by Zelda and her experience that we did not experience in Breath of the Wild in order to get Link up to speed on why they need to go look for Ganondorf's corpse. So with the end of Breath of the Wild, at one point they are going to return to Kakariko Village, and then under the tutelage of both Impa and Zelda, they instruct and recount to Link the true events of the Age of Calamity. And this is how the narrative will be presented in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, ending off with some secrets beyond the curtain as told by Zelda that will set up Breath of the Wild 2. And with it releasing this year, 2020, it will be a perfect setup for an explosive Zelda 35th anniversary in 2021 with Breath of the Wild 2's release. Honestly, these possibilities excite me, and Nintendo has constantly been pulling rabbits out of a hat recently with Nintendo Switch, breaking down the conventions and the track records that they're known for. I mean, this whole concept is incredibly unlike Nintendo, but I'm here for it. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that Age of Calamity is going to set up Breath of the Wild 2, and how do you suppose it's going to go down? Do you agree with what I think? Leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, favorite, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK for more Zelda content every week. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for making this video happen. If you want to find out how you can support HMK for just $1 a month, check out my Patreon info in the description box below. Alright guys, until the next video, this has been HMK, and I'll check you guys later.